Hey guys, I'm Sarika and welcome to Your Knowledge Buddy. So today I am back with another new video, but I have a special guest who's going to talk about the whole of the UK job market, the recruitment process, why you're getting rejected or why you're not hearing from the UK recruiters. She's Claire and she's working in the recruitment space for the last 14 to 15 years. So without any further delay, let me introduce you guys to Claire. Hi Claire, welcome to Your Knowledge Buddy and thanks for being on my show.
No, you're welcome. No problem.
Claire, if you don't mind, can you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Claire. I am a recruiter and I have been in the recruitment industry now for around about 15 years.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Okay, so I believe your knowledge and experience and expertise is going to help my audience. So my questions are all related to recruitment and how people from overseas can benefit from it. So my first question to you is, how is the job market these days?
So the job market in the UK is it's a little bit different at the moment, and I do believe that it's no surprise to anyone following international news that there has been a lot of impactful changes over the last few years. Brexit, COVID, the war in the Ukraine, inflation costs. So there's been a lot of economic changes, and it's had a direct impact on the UK market in the sense that we are finding that the candidate applications are smaller. So we are finding that in these uncertain times, people are not as willing to move jobs, really. That job security has become incredibly important. So we are finding that that's a little bit of a trend at the moment, in the fact that the UK job market is the candidate traffic that we're seeing to any job we put out is a lot less than it was, say, a year to 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of job vacancies, do you think the number of vacancies are still the same as it was last year or a year before?
I don't think that they're the same. I think that they're, again, because of the amount of changes that have happened. So if we use COVID as an unfortunate example, while COVID was happening, a lot of organisations stopped recruiting.
Yeah.
And then once the world entered a form of normality, there was a knee-jerk reaction to recruitment. So the market was flooded with vacancies.
Yeah.
So you had a flood of vacancies. You had a flood of applicants because the unfortunate circumstance of that was a lot of people lost their jobs.
Yeah.
So you had a flood of vacancies, a flood of applicants. So the market was essentially saturated. If I look at a personal example for me, a year ago, if I put a job advertisement out there, I'd be looking at about 100 applications. And it's fair to say that 75% of them, unfortunately, weren't relevant for that job role. So the market was saturated. Whereas now we've kind of come out of that period, but then with all the economic uncertainty, that's presented a new challenge now with candidates.
Okay. So listening to you, I think we should still encourage people to still apply for the jobs, right? If they think they can do that role by reading the job description.
Yeah. I think the benefit to that is what you now have with the job market is you have genuine roles. There isn't this knee-jerk reaction anymore. Organisations are really looking at their resourcing and really looking at the skill sets that they require. So when a vacancy goes out into the job market now, it's a genuine vacancy. And what I mean by that is the company, the hiring managers, the recruiters, they're really investing their time now to get these vacancies right. And I think as well, what's quite a real positive for your audience in regards to looking at international movement is that COVID has completely opened up the UK to this hybrid way of working. So everybody is more comfortable doing Teams meetings. Everybody is more comfortable with the idea of locations being blown out of the water. So it has really opened up that idea of a full global movement.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That brings me to my next question, because as you know, my audience is from overseas like India, Asia or Africa, people who want to migrate to the UK, or their audience in the UK, like international students who are studying here, who wants to move to a work visa, which is the skill visa. So the questions which I generally get from them is like, in which scenario do you think you give preference to candidates who require a sponsorship, whether people are applying from India or anywhere abroad, or within the UK, but they require a sponsorship?
I wouldn't necessarily say that in any recruitment piece there is a preference that's given. What I think really drives the job market today is that skill set. And you know, the international movement, the types of roles that we find are very niche skill sets that aren't necessarily kind of saturated for the UK market is very typical as what it's always been, really. You're looking at your technical type roles, so you're looking at solution architects, data architects, you're looking at your kind of tax and audit roles, actuarial roles. So those core kind of roles that always attracted international candidates still exist. But what we are seeing now is there is an opening up of other capabilities such as HR transformation, you know, kind of healthcare, life science type roles. So it is that there's been an opening up that's moved away from the conventional kind of skill set that we would look for candidates from India or Africa. There's quite a big drive at the minute to look at tax and audit capabilities within the South African market. So we've recognised that you know, South Africa candidates do have a really good idea of those types of roles, and it's an incredible skill set that they come with. So I wouldn't necessarily say that there's ever a preference, but it is very driven by skill set. And again, I think because of that hybrid way of working has created a level playing field for a lot of people. You'll know, personally for me as a recruiter, you don't really look at an international candidate as any differently from a UK candidate at that very beginning of the recruitment process. It's what can they bring to the table.
So my next question is, how do you think they can stand out from the other candidates?
Again, I think it's being very aware that they are an international candidate. I think is the best way to look at it. And this answer, unfortunately, might drip feed into some of our other questions, but I think it's relevant for this in regards to the, you know, some of the pitfalls that I see when I look at international applicants is that they kind of throw everything in the kitchen sink to their application. So their CV is, you know, qualification heavy, and they've done, you know, this job and that job and that job and that job. And if they have that skill set, that is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, a varied amount of experience is brilliant. But I think it's going back to the foundation of which job is it that you're applying for, and really hone in on that job and what skill set is that job asking for, and where do you match that. And what I always say to international candidates, and again, it's, as a recruiter, if you had time to ring every application, it would be fantastic, but we'd never leave our computers. But if you do see an international applicant, and it does tend to be a trend with the international applicants that they will put everything on their CV, and their CVs tend to be about 5 or 6 pages long. If you contact them and then have a conversation with them, okay, so why did you apply for this role? You can see where their skill set is, but really it's about tailoring your CV and your cover letter to each individual application. Okay, so another thing to bear in mind in regards to that application process is that more and more of the bigger organisations are starting to automate their recruitment process. What that means is that at the very start of an applicant creating a profile and putting a CV onto their profile and then applying for a job, the automated tracking system, so the ATS, it will use an algorithm to look for keywords, and essentially it's looking for keywords to match up with that job specification. If it doesn't find the right keywords, or if the CV is too big and too saturated, that will automatically reject that candidate. So before it's even got to a recruiter who can essentially reject those assumptions and find out a bit more, an automated system will just reject them. So that's why it's even more important now that those CVs are tailored and short and sharp.
Thank you. This is really important, guys. Please make a note of it. Exactly. Thank you very much. I had been educating my audience about it. Always tailor your CV based on the job description, and your CV shouldn't be more than 2 pages because nobody got time to read more than that, right?
No, it's very true. It is true.
Thank you very much. And thank you for saying that again and again. And I hope this is clear to my audience. Okay, so I have a question basically from the international students who are studying here, who are passing, say, this year or who passed last year. So the kind of questions they're asking me, do companies hire the freshers who are passing from the universities?
They do, yes, they do, yeah. I know that there is, on the government website, there is a lot of information about visas, and they do have a company organisational list, which lists the companies that will actually take on international students or people that have just qualified. I think there's two entryways. So you can either apply for a graduate programme within a UK organisation. What you will find is that the larger organisations have the capability and the process to take on international students. So again, it is a little bit of a numbers game, but I think what's really important is that they have to be honest about their timelines. So the way that these graduate programs work is you have set intakes at each point of the year. And unfortunately for an international student, if their visa switch or if their sponsorship is not up to date, they might miss that particular intake. So I think they have to be aware that they might want to start at a certain amount of time, but it could be that they miss that intake. So it means that their period within the UK will be prolonged, and they have to think about ways that they are going to financially support that, or that they're just generally, where are they going to live, where are they going to stay while this process is happening. So I think that's something that they need to be really aware of. And what I would say to any international student and any international applicant really is make your intentions clear from the beginning. You know, this is my situation now. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I need. And just be really honest about them timelines, and be aware that those timelines might not work in the first instance, but it might be that you'll go on to a later intake.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Claire. So I am going to ask you a question which we already discussed about, when do you reject candidates, or what do you see? So one of the reasons we already talked about, it's a kind of everything in 6-page CV where they put everything, right?
Yes.
So what are the other reasons you have seen that you'd think, you have rejected candidates in the past?
Yeah. So one of the if we look at kind of recruiters' red flags, and again, this is kind of my personal experience, it's not to say that it's a recruitment standard, but most organisations, when you apply for a job on an organisation's website, the background of that will be a recruitment portal software. And 9 times out of 10, the candidate will be asked to create a profile. And what will happen is, in the background of that recruitment portal, a profile will be created. And 9 times out of 10, what it means is that every time that candidate applies for a job, it will attach to this portal. And so often we see with international applicants is that they will have applied for 10 plus roles. I had one international applicant who applied for 20 plus positions in the one company I was working for. And again, this might be a negative because it's working on assumptions, but if you're looking at that applicant, you're kind of wondering, do they want to work for us because they want these roles, or do they want to work for us because we're a big organisation? Are they just looking for a pathway into the UK? It dilutes that skill set. And if they've applied for 3 or 4 jobs in the same kind of capability, then you start to understand that they're just not sure where their skill set lies. But when you see people applying for a HR job and then a solution architect job, and then you just get a feeling that this person isn't really either reading the job adverts, they're just blanket job applying. So that as a recruiter does put you off, I'll be completely honest. And then I think sometimes the rejections can be as simple as that particular role, the organisation needs somebody to start quickly. And it is obviously bringing somebody over internationally. It is a process, and it is a long process. And it's just purely down to the fact that sometimes the organisation hasn't got time to wait. They need somebody in within that month or within a 3-month basis. But what I would say is that, there's no, if an applicant has applied for a job that they, have absolute confidence they can do, they're confident in the skill sets that they can bring to the table, they have a genuine reason that organisation matches their values and their culture, then don't be afraid to reach out and ask for more context as to why they've been rejected.
Yeah. Thank you, Claire. Thank you for sharing so many insights. Before we wrap this video, any final tips to my audience?
I think again, like I said, one of the only tips is that there is one of the things I come across a lot with international applicants is that, you know, it's not just a job, it's not just a move. You know, it can be an emotional thing to do. You know, there are some international applicants who are used to flying all across the world, and they pick up a job and then they move back, and you know, they are used to that. But for some of the international applicants I've worked with over the years, it's a big thing. You know, there's a lot of emotion attached to it. You're moving to a country, you know, you don't necessarily know anyone. You know, you're either bringing your family with you, and if they've got a young family, you know, there's lots of things about schools involved. It's a really emotional thing to do. And I think what I would always say to them is again, it's that transparency. Be very honest with that organisation about, you know, you're moving to a country you don't know. Find out what that organisation is prepared to pay for, what's included, what's not included. You know, look at things like the NHS surcharge. That's a really big thing that international candidates get tripped up on. Whose plane costs are covered, whose visa costs are covered. You know, if they want to bring some of their family over, you know, who bears that cost? And then look at things about, you know, the local area. What does rent look like? What do house prices look like? Mm-hmm. And it just makes that whole process a lot easier. But be very honest and open, and use your recruiter to say, you know, can I have more information about what's the company's relocation policy? What's their global mobility policy? Because there has been instances where we've got so far down the process with an international candidate, and then they've suddenly gone, oh, I don't know what I'm doing about my wife and child's visas. And there's either an expectation that the company will deal with them and give all the legal advice, but it's very rare that organisations will do that. They will offer some form of guidance, but they won't pay for it, and they won't do the application forms. So I think it's just having a really good understanding upfront of what is expected of them and what is expected of the organisation. And it just makes that whole process, you know, less upheaval, less emotional, and it's just a nicer experience overall.
And less stressful as well.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Claire. Thank you for sharing your insights. And I hope this is going to help all my audience. Thank you for being part of the show. Thank you.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Thank you.
So before we wrap this video, guys, go and apply for the jobs and tailor your CV as per the job description, and always make sure it is ATS compliant. Make sure your CV is only 2-pager. Please do not apply for the jobs where you are not the right candidate, because you will be rejected. So on that note, good luck to everyone who's planning to apply jobs overseas. And thanks for watching my video till the end, and I'll see you guys soon with my next video. Till then, keep learning.